Okay, great. I did a technological feat. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. On behalf of our department here at New Student and Family Programs at Virginia Tech, we're very delighted, first of all, that your student chose Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. And we're happy that you're interested in learning more about partnering in student success. So thank you very much for attending the webinar tonight or watching the recording on our YouTube channel sometime in the future. My name is Barry Lenore, and I am one of the program coordinators here at New Student and Family Programs. My track is family engagement. Helping us in our webinar today is also our wonderful Associate Director, Samantha Sam Buchanan, my boss, my wonderful boss, and the engine, and also the Q&A master here. And we're also happy to have with us Meredith Etheridge, one of our New Student and Family Program student interns, who's going to be available for questions, asking questions to a real bona fide Virginia Tech student from her own experience and her perspective. We would invite you whenever you're on campus to come say hi to us upstairs in the Squires Student Center, Suite 319. We'd love to meet you in person. Just a couple logistics. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted at our YouTube channel, which is at Hokies on Track. And also captions are enabled if you wish to turn on your closed captioning while you're watching live. And I hope you have enabled your question and answer function. It is enabled for you as viewers to drop your questions into the Q&A. Please keep your questions focused on the subject matter tonight. If you ask us about parking, we might say we'll answer that later if we can. So try to keep it to our topic tonight, which is our philosophy of families as partners in student success, and as well as looking at the NowWhat.vt.edu website. You will be able, as attendees, to see the chat, which is where we will post some answers to everyone, as well as posting in the Q&A. And we'll also post some web links and resources in the chat. You as attendees will not be able to use the chat, so please use that Q&A function for questions. And also you can scroll through the questions and see if there's a question you wanted to ask that someone else has already asked. You can upvote it by giving it a thumbs up, and that moves it up for us. As far as I know, that moves it up. So once again, welcome, and let's get started. Your student is about to experience an exciting and significant time as they prepare for their time here at Virginia Tech. You too, as a family member, will experience some changes and transitions. And our time together now will hopefully provide further clarity and information about how you can best support your new Hokie during this exciting new chapter for your family. So welcome, families, once again to Virginia Tech, and welcome to the Hokie Nation. Our agenda for this webinar includes discussion of the philosophy of families as partners in your student success, and a quick look at the NowWhat.vt.edu webpage resources. We will have a time for Q&A with Meredith, our student intern, and then time at the end for whatever questions remain in the Q&A. As you may have guessed from our webinar title, Families as Partners, today's presentation is very much directed to new college families, but we always welcome anyone who may be watching if that's just the kind of entertainment you need tonight. So let's just dive right in. We view ourselves in our office at New Student and Family Programs, and you all as partners in your students' Virginia Tech experience. The student, as you see in this graph here, is at the center of the partnership, and families, peers, the university play a larger role in shaping and molding the student's experience. Together, we all can support and provide that support for your student to give them a positive start and to encourage thriving and success throughout their academic career. However, as advertised, we're going to be focusing on families as partners. Families, that's you. At New Student and Family Programs, that's our descriptor for families. Families as partners. And what we mean by that can best be explained as a tandem bicycle trip with your student in the front seat and you in the rear seat. You and your student are on a journey together, and your student is the captain, the decision maker, choosing the direction, navigating the route, communicating what's ahead. And in tandem bike terminology, the student is the captain. That makes you are what's called the stoker. Now, the old definition of a stoker is the person who tends the furnace in the engine room on a steamship or a steam locomotive, literally stoking the fire. The stoker is essentially the engine room of the bike. Now, in modern slang, a stoker is someone who is always enthusiastic and positive, such as, I'm so stoked to be watching this webinar tonight. I think a combination, a combined definition is appropriate to this analogy. So if there's one key takeaway from today's information, it's this idea of you providing energy and support for your student. You're both on the journey together, but the stoker provides that extra power. And the stoker can provide that extra power for getting up hills and slopes during some of the more difficult times. The role of the stoker on the back of a tandem bike is much like your role supporting your student. It's crucial to remember that your student is the captain, the leader in this trip, the decision maker, ultimately responsible for their college experience. Now, we at the university have adult expectations of your student, and we treat them like the adults they are. We expect the student as the captain to navigate the information path, which is why your student is receiving the information emails. You as families, as stokers, can support them, but obviously don't do everything for them. Okay. So similarly, if your student was preparing for a cross-country bike trip on the tandem bike with you, you now have time right now, prior to move-in this August, to help your student prepare for their arrival at Virginia Tech. With the time that you have now through the summer and before your assigned move-in begins on either August 20 or August 21 or August 22, we do have 3 recommendations for how to help your student prepare. And the first one is to make this the late spring and summer of adult training. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And then discussing expectations with your student and having important and maybe difficult conversations with your student. And then both you and your student committing to getting familiar with the Virginia Tech information. So let's dive in briefly to some of this information. Let's talk about the spring and summer of adult training, even though the spring is quickly fading away, although depending on where you live in Virginia, your student has already graduated or won't be graduating from high school until June 14th or maybe even later. But the spring and summer of adult training, what does your student need prior to coming and living on their own, maybe for the first time, maybe living away from home or for the first time, maybe the first time ever living with one or more roommates? Did your student have the privilege of always having their very own bedroom? If so, maybe there's some things that you need to prepare them for, such as no shame life skills, doing their own laundry, banking, getting cash. If they need to get cash, how do you get cash? I always carry cash because I'm old. But anyway, cleaning, basic cleaning, repairs. Now, certainly the maintenance crews here at Virginia Tech will do a lot of the major repairs, but what if there's little fixes to their things? What are they going to do? Time management is very important. Do your students use a calendar or a planner or the calendar app on their phone? And what are their sleep habits? And who wakes them up in the morning? Do they wake themselves up in the morning? And certainly by the time they get here, that needs to be the case. Also, preparing them for the academic rigor and study habits. If your students were like my students, my son breezed through high school and hardly ever had to study at all and made straight A's. And I tell you what, as soon as he got to college chemistry, wow, he hit a wall. So preparing your student for that academic rigor and the kind of study habits that are needed and going to be increased than they were from high school. And then also the adult expectation of health and well-being. A pro tip that we got from a parent was have your student make and go to their final sort of at-home doctor appointment and checkup prior to coming to Virginia Tech. Have them do it all on their own. and see that, look, you can do this. You can do these adult things. And that was a cool tip that we got from a parent. Take time over the summer to cover these topics. And remember that none of these topics are one and done conversations. It'll take some mistakes along the way, along with some tips and reminders from you before your student is 100% ready to adult. But we're now going to move on to the second point, and that's discussions and expectations that you have with your student. Some of those important discussions, maybe difficult conversations that you need to have, and the expectations that you have for your student, as well as the expectation that your student might have for you. So, for example, what happens now through August 20 or 21 or 22, depending on when your move-in date is? What are those key dates and plans that your student has with their high school friends or with family? What are all the celebration events and milestones? Are there going to be a lot of my last this in my hometown or my last this? What about family time? What's that going to look like this summer? Is there a sibling who needs to get a little sibling time and not feel slighted? How is your student moving away going to cause some shifting household responsibilities in terms of chores? Please don't let everything fall upon the younger sibling. I was the youngest of three, and I still resent scooping the cat litter. I just want you to know that. Let that be a warning, families. The evolving relationships with family and high school friends. Your student is going to widen their circle of friends. They're not going to find replacement people, but they're going to find more of their people. And that will affect the relationships with their high school friends and even with you. What's transportation to, from, and here at Virginia Tech going to look like? Your student does not need a car during their first year of Virginia Tech. We have an excellent public transport system. However, if your student is planning on working and it's not going to be on campus or is going to have some kind of a situation where they have to be off campus, then these are things that you need to plan and talk about. And then on move-in day, what will goodbye look like, leaving home? What will goodbye look at on move-in day? And we want to make sure that you know that your students' first 2 days, even more than the first 2 days, are filled with very important and some mandatory activities and meetings as part of their overall transition in their first couple of days at Virginia Tech. So we would recommend that you don't plan on doing a whole lot of stuff with your student after move-in, because there will be a lot of pre-planned activities that we would encourage them to attend as part of their transition. So if you're wanting to have that time in Blacksburg or around with your student, try to make that before move-in instead of after move-in, if you can. All right. So as you're thinking about these expectations and conversation, just keep in mind something to think about. What is a topic in which your expectations as a family might not be aligned with what your students' expectations are? So don't wait until the very last minute to review these. Is our recommendation. Okay. All right. Well, continuing with this expectations and conversations. Let's talk about some of the more difficult conversations that you might need to have with your students. And these are still tied to expectations, but you got to talk about money. Is there going to be an allowance? Do you expect your student to have a job? By the way, Dining Services is hiring. I told John Barrett that I would announce it in every single webinar, Sam. Your student can work on campus, and there's really flexible hours. And research shows that students that have a part-time job do better with time management and academically too. Emergency needs for money. What constitutes an emergency need? And then how will that student get the money? Are you still managing your student's bank account? And does money magically show up in their bank account? Maybe it's time to have a conversation and shift that to the student's responsibility. What about visits? The family coming to Virginia Tech or the student going home? Are there any non-negotiable dates that you have as a family or that your student has? And then how does coming to campus and the excitement of things that happen at campus change that? For example, what if we go 9-0 in football and then Clemson comes to town? It's going to be a giant big deal here in Blacksburg, which you back at home might be like, we don't watch football. It's not that big a deal. So be ready for those kind of discussions about, Are there any non-negotiable dates about visits and things like that? The favorite topic of all families with their teenage and young adults is about dating and sex and consent and safety within that. So make sure that you're able to have adult and not naive conversations with your students about these things. Talk to your student about alcohol and cannabis and drug use and the laws and what the university laws compared to the Virginia laws are. And then what's your communication going to look like? Do you really expect your student to call you every Sunday evening, no matter what's going on? And if so, make sure that you communicate that, but also come to an agreement with your student. What is your student's expectation of you? Now, I want to touch back on some of those more difficult conversations, dating and partying and these kind of things. It might be awkward, it might be difficult, and these might be, some of the harder conversations to have with your student, but you do need to know that research shows that when it comes to these topics, students respect what their families have to say. They are absolutely on board with what you have to say. Okay, all right. So pro tip about how to start these very difficult conversations. An excellent way to initiate them is just by asking your student, hey, what do you think? And that's a great way to prime the well, if you will. This summer will go fast. There's a lot to do and there's a lot to balance. Remember that your role now as families, as partners, is to support your student, even through these difficult moments. Make the most of your time together. Be patient, be understanding, be excited about everything that your student is about to experience and the ways in which they'll grow. Remember to keep your sense of humor. Make sure they hear your excitement and not any of your anxiety, even though you might be anxious. And then manage your anxiety by informing yourself with official Virginia Tech information. Speaking of Virginia Tech information, we want to make sure that you know that there are, and of course I know that you know that there's a fire hose of Virginia Tech information. Take it a little bit at a time. It's out there. Your student is the captain. And your student is primarily responsible for knowing these dates and deposits and deadlines. And all this information is being emailed to your student through their Virginia Tech, that they're at vt.edu email, which they should be checking daily. So we often have to tell families who might call our office and say, well, I don't know when this is happening or when this, we'll say your student is receiving that information through their Virginia Tech email. So there might be a conversation you need to have with your student about, hey, if there's important stuff that you need my help with, like making the deposit or whatever, make sure you're communicating that with me, because that information is going to your student. Another good way to, and my friends put it in the chat, another great way to get students to chat is, can you tell me more about that? What do you think about that? Can you tell me more about it? We do want to get you familiar with Virginia Tech information through a couple of our resources, and one is the Hokie Family Hub. Have you completed your profile and sign up yet on the Hokie Family Hub? Please subscribe if you haven't. It's free. It has excellent information specifically geared toward families. As of this afternoon, there were 67,650 Hokie families subscribed to the Hub. So it means it's a great resource for information. It provides tips, alerts, news, dates, resource links, and engagement with our Hokies. It's often where you will register for events like spring and fall family weekends, and you can choose how often you receive news from the Hub and what topics you receive it from, based on what your interest is and what communities you want to join. And keep an eye out, because we are establishing some new or renewed committees with some great content starting this fall. Also, the Hokies on Track app, which you can get on your phone in either the Google Store or the Apple Store. And this is the app that your student will use for major weekends and events here at Virginia Tech, like the Weeks of Welcome. But there's also a guide in the Hokies on Track app called the Hokie Families Guide. which is where there's a lot of great information, a lot of general information, a lot of Blacksburg information, and campus information, and dining hall information, as well as information about our events. So we highly, highly encourage those. And there are links to get both of them at students.vt.edu/families. By now, you should also be aware of the online orientation module that your student must complete, and it's mandatory for your student to complete this online orientation module before July 31st. Families, too, have the option to view all the information in the orientation module using the family member login, clearly denoted here in this slide. That's at orientation.vt.edu. And we know that your student is completing the student version of this. So just to make sure, and we did have a situation maybe where the family and the student was using the same like home desktop computer with the same browser, and there were some issues with maybe logging in. So just be ready to sort of navigate some of that weird automatic password saving and whatever, if it means you doing the module, the family version, and your student doing it. Okay. And we can help you with that if you send us an email. All right. The orientation module. Within the orientation module, you're going to learn a little bit about FERPA. We're not going to spend a whole slide talking about FERPA, but you need to know what FERPA is, and you need to know how that affects your access to your student's information, and that your student needs to grant you consented access if they want to. So learn more about that at registrar.vt.edu/FERPA. Learn and understand what FERPA means in this process. We're going to spend a little time now, and I might ask, it might take me a minute as I talk through it because I lost one of my windows here. But we're going to take a look at the You're In Now What website, which is an excellent resource for you. We want to make sure that, first of all, you're aware of it, because we as an office are pointing just about everybody we can to the You're In Now What website here at Virginia Tech. So I'm going to attempt to stop my share and then share a different one. Hey, look at that. Here we are. All right. Let's try a different share screen, and I'll take you through the You're In Now What website here. Nope, that's not it. That's not what I wanted to do. Stop share. Okay. Sorry, you're just going to have to deal with my very untechnically savvy moments here. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, well. Hey, Sam, maybe maybe Sam can share the You're In Now What. We'll have a race to see who can share. Okay. Oh, look at those cute baby feet. I tell you what. You're In Now What. And by the way, if you can't ever find something, just Google search it and add Virginia Tech to it, and it will find it. We have a vast website at Virginia Tech. The You're In Now What website, there it is. It's just NowWhat.vt.edu. And if you scroll down the page, there's basically three windows. There's a start here with the new student checklist. There's this at home with learning more about what Virginia Tech has to offer. And then there's a link to the Families as Partners information. We would encourage you, if you haven't already, to start at the start here, the new student checklist. So let's try that, Sam. Oh, this is great, just talking you through it, Sam. I'm glad I don't have to be clicking around. So the new student checklist is formatted in a way, we call it an accordion style, where there's clickable pluses that will show you, okay, January through May, which is kind of where we are right now. We're still in May. Step by step, breaking down all this information, kind of step by step, what should be happening, what your student should be doing. And you will note as you read this that the language is directed toward the captain, not the stoker. It's directed toward the student. So it's saying all the verb is complete this. That means your student is to complete this, with links to every single thing. And this is where you're going to learn about Hokie Spa and all the portals and things in which that you have to get things done. You get into June, which starts this weekend. You're going to complete housing and dining contract by June 1st. That's Saturday, Sam and Meredith. Oh boy. Okay. And you're going to do that through one campus, and your students going to learn about one campus, learn about living learning programs, the computer requirements and the programs that they need to have on their laptop, setting it all up, registering for classes. And by the way, we do have another registrar and class registration advising webinar coming up. Immunizations that are required. Hey, there's that word again, FERPA and access levels. Then we get into July, and it starts to get even more real. Okay, we've got our admitted student visits, and we would love for you to come to it. And admitted student visits, they're being held in July on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday on weekends when you're available, hopefully. Not required, they are optional. And if you haven't ever been to Virginia Tech, it's highly recommended. But again, it's if you're available. Roommate selection and move-in date selection starts to happen. All those transcripts and test scores, placement assessments, getting your Hokie passport ID, often referred to as your Hokie P. But it's like it's an ID card, and that's what they use for swiping and for access to just about everything. Planning transportation, learning about safety and security on campus. And look at there, a little plug for our programs, Fall Family Weekend. Then we get into August, and August is going to fly because you got to complete that orientation module before August 1st, and you start to set up your experience VT experience with your strengths assessment, learning about Gobbler Connect, which is where all of our events are, your tuition bill, infotech, IT, how to use it, getting ready for move-in. Oh my gosh, it's all there. Okay, boy, it's all there, but it's broken down bit by bit by bit. And so pretty much anytime someone calls our office, we're pointing them to the NowWhat.vt.edu. NowWhat.vt.edu. It's your guide to life at Virginia Tech. So take those initial steps, do it with your student, but it is directed to your student. Okay. I haven't been able to watch the Q&A while I've been running my mouth the whole time. However, we do have time now. We have Meredith with us. And so if there are questions that you have for Meredith or that we have just in general, I do see there are no open questions. So I'll prime the well for our families with a question to Meredith. And I know this will come as an absolute surprise to Meredith. You will be completely unprepared for this question. But Meredith, just first of all, introduce yourself to us, Meredith. Your hometown, your year, have you declared a major, how long you'll be staying with us in new student family programs. Just kidding. Yeah.
We don't need to talk about that part. Hi everyone, my name is Meredith Etheridge. I am currently a new student family programs intern with the office. I work specifically for the Weeks of Welcome track, but I'm here to answer any questions. I am currently going into my third year at Virginia Tech, and I am a business information technology major. Oh, and my hometown is Richmond, Virginia.
RVA. All right, very good. Okay, Meredith, I know you've seen this presentation before, so you've had some time to think about it, but we talked about those adulting skills and like families kind of helping students get ready for adulting. What would you say in your own experience, what was the most useful adulting skill needed by a first-year student, or for you, and then also what you would say for everybody else?
Sure. I think there are so many important adulting skills. For me personally, I think that the most important skill that I learned and found most helpful was being comfortable with the uncomfortable. College is a scary experience. It's a scary transition from high school to college. I know personally I'm a very shy, quiet person, and one thing that I made a goal for myself coming into college was getting to know people. So this may be very stereotypical of me, but I was the one who knocked on every single door in my hallway, and The first door that I knocked on were three girls in a room together, and they are actually now my roommates. So it did pay off in the end with that adulting skill. But it's a whole nother experience because being comfortable with the uncomfortable, you don't know the type of people you meet, the network you can make, the connections you can have. College is not just about academics. It's a very important part, but it's also about having a balance and being exploring the different opportunities there are out there.
I think Virginia Tech, having come back now, having been a student, as Sam said, back when all the roads were dirt and we lived in huts on campus. But anyway, having come back now in the modern era to Virginia Tech, recognizing just how good if there is a focus on well-being, student well-being, like the whole student, the academics, just like you said, they're a big part of it, but the student's well-being affects the academics. And so yeah, your adulting skill of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, in other words, kind of putting yourself out there, it was important to connect to people, wasn't it?
Mhm. I see some questions popping up. Would you like me to read them and answer them?
Oh, this is good. You'll also see some in some places that that Sam is typing answers. And
Yes.
some of these are getting into the weeds of specifics of like housing applications and computer requirements and things like that. And we'll try to answer as best we can. Just know that this webinar tonight was a little more general. But I tell you what, Meredith, let's try one more and then we'll see if there are some more kind of general answers or questions that we can ask. So in terms of your academics, okay, you talked a little bit about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that helping kind of your connecting with people and finding your place. But in terms of your academics here at Virginia Tech, what's a campus resource that has been super helpful to you and that you really hope that other people are aware of?
I think a campus resource, like I was going on, college is very important about academics, but I think beyond that, it's also about professional development as well, because college is a preparation in your career in your life. So one thing that I found really helpful was the Career Service Center, located on campus. It's on the Washington Street. It's right across the street from our McComish gym. If you've ever been to campus or familiar, but it's really easy to find. On our campus map, which is on the Virginia Tech website. But beyond that, the career services has helped me. I did not reach out to them until my second year. I did not know about them my first year here at Virginia Tech. And by the time I got them, they really helped me. They helped me refine my resume. They helped me prepare for like interview skills. They also taught me more about like what the importance of connections and networks and LinkedIn and all of these other things. So it just kind of took it a step further beyond academics and how I can use my academics with developing my professional skills and beyond that of college.
Good. And we've benefited from that office coming to our office a couple times this past academic year, helping our interns with resumes and things like that. And Meredith just keeps getting job offers. People just keep coming to our office and coming to our building and giving Meredith job offers. So she's just waiting for more commas and more zeros on that signing bonus, I think. All right, we have had some questions roll in that I know that we can answer, and then there are some that we might struggle with. But I saw one from Bonnie. When do the weeks of welcome begin? And the weeks of welcome, that is something that our office handles. And Meredith, I'll let you go ahead and answer. When do weeks of welcome start?
Our weeks of welcome starts right when the first day of move-in, so right when the freshmen are coming onto campus, which is August 20th, and it lasts 2 weeks, so our last date will be August 30th.
Now, does that mean that if a student's move-in day is August 22nd, that they're going to miss out on 2 full days of the weeks of welcoming programming?
No, we have a waterfall approach. So the first like couple days, no matter what day your student moves on, the first 2 days of their move-in will look exactly the same. And the first 2 days typically revolve around residential well-being, and then college sessions. So our more fun social events and also like community building events for our students don't happen until later in the week after the first 2 days of whenever your student moves in.
So if your move-in is on August 20, 21, or 22, It doesn't matter. The weeks of welcome begins then, and they run through day after day after day, all the way through August 30, Friday, August 30. And what happens on that Friday, August 30, the last day of weeks of welcome?
Yes, of course. Our last day is Gobbler Fest. It is this very huge event that happens on the drill field, which is located in the center of campus. It's this huge grass area, and it is completely filled with tents and all of our organizations and clubs. I call it like the giant in-person club fair for everyone, but it's a great way. I always encourage students to go check it out if they're interested in any clubs at all. We also have Gobbler Connect if they can't make it to Gobbler Fest, but Gobbler Connect is just our online platform with all of our clubs and organizations. But Gobbler Fest is a really great way to learn more about those clubs as well. And our booth will also be there representing Hokies on Track.
Yeah, and we've heard that the Gobbler Fest can be like it's so many. There are so many student organizations, but that's what makes it excellent. Meredith, if I was a student, and I know that's hard to imagine me with hair, but if I was a student and it was Gobbler Fest, is that my only opportunity to like sign up for clubs? What if I only get to like 3 of the 22 tables I want to visit?
Funny enough, I actually didn't go to Gobbler Fest my first year, but the great thing is it happens every year. So if it's not the first year, you can go the year after, the year after that. And if you don't even go, then once again, like I said, Gobbler Connect is our online platform. I believe it's just developmentally.vt.edu. And students can go on there and they can actually filter through the types of clubs and organizations they are interested in, or they can see all, I believe, 900 that we have on campus, which is a lot. So the filtering helps. But if it's like you want a more professional club, we have those, or a social club, we have those, or even just anything specific that any Hokie or student wants. Gobbler Connect is a great way to use also.
Thanks for answering.
You're welcome.
We have seen some hardware and computer questions coming through. We will try to get to those. It is one of the links in the NowWhat.vt.edu new student checklist, the computer requirements. There are different requirements for some of the different majors. So make sure that you are also diving into if your student has declared a major, some of those requirements that are part of that. And just to say it one more time, that kind of information will come to your student at their @vt.edu email, specifically from their college, once that starts to happen. We know that a lot of purchasing decisions need to be made now, so we'll try to get some of those answers out to you there. I've seen a couple questions about power of attorney for students over the age of 18 in the event of emergency, or if a student is under the age of 18, if they're 17, can they still do a lot of the paperwork? Generally, the students who come to Virginia Tech were seen as they are the adult, they are the driver, they are the captain in this situation. So in the event of emergency, that it is part of the FERPA information, and also part of the paperwork that they will fill out of who their next of contact is going to be in the case of an emergency. So that is a process, and it is a process that your student will get that information, and you just want to keep your antenna up and be ready to help them through that, because that's one that they haven't had to do yet, right? In high school, is to start declaring that kind of information of just in case. Meredith, do you see anything you'd like to answer?
No, I think Sam is tackling all of the good questions.
I see Sam is answering, my daughter has not completed the orientation as of today. They want to know around how long it will take to get it complete. The good news is you can begin it, it saves, you can come back to it. Same thing as a family member doing it optionally. You can start it, you can save and come back to it. It is a process. They probably won't do it all in one sitting in one day, or maybe even two. We encourage them to take their time. It is full of a lot of information. So plan the time to do that. But I think, what do you think, Sam? I mean, if they really two days, yeah, for like maybe a couple hours.
2 hours ish seems to be. So when I look at the data, honestly, it looks like some students are in there for days on end. But most students get in there and they click through and they get done within a couple hours.
And then somebody with the technical prowess that I have, that probably would take 2 weeks. So I just want to make sure I block that off, that they.
We make it so easy. You just gotta click.
That's right. Sam answered one there in the chat about weeks of welcome. You can see that. I will let you know if you're watching the webinar, we will, we're still figuring it out, but we're going to put a lot of these links that we have put into the chat. We will put into the description of the video on our YouTube channel. And we're also trying to find a way where we do get a report of the Q&A to be able to convert that into text and also share that within the description on our YouTube channel of our videos. I'm going to go ahead and put our end screen up, which has links to our future webinars, and also, but we're gonna stay on and continue answering questions here. Let's see if I can click the right one this time, Meredith. What do you think? I think I did it. I think I did it. And then, can he do it? There it is.
Wrong slide again. It's the notes. You have the notes
That's
again.
the notes one. I didn't do it. I'm really not this bad. For all the folks watching at home, and I'm gonna just explain while I go here. For the folks watching at home, they took my computer away from me for a little while to fix it. And when they brought it back, it was all clean, but it behaves differently now. So I'm having to relearn. Do we have the correct screen now, Meredith?
Yes. And
Okay.
Barry, I have the perfect question for you to answer.
Okay, yeah.
Are there events for families for family weekend or just a football game?
That is a great question. So our family weekend this coming fall is September 20, 21, and 22. And you'll find that in our website, students.vt.edu/families. It is a football weekend on September 21. That is a home game. I believe it's against Rutgers, so it's not an ACC game. And we don't know when kickoff is going to be. We may not know that until a week or 10 days beforehand. So that affects what programming we end up doing on Saturday. Generally, most of our family weekends are going to be around a football weekend because that's what our survey data shows. So there are a lot of events for families around Fall Family Weekend, including and also not including the athletic events, including football. But since it's on a football weekend, football ends up being a big part of it. If you're not a big fan of that kind of crowd and that kind of energy on campus, come another time. Come on a non-football weekend. There won't be structured programming, but there's so much that you can do. And I recommend Google searching for the Hokie bucket list and completing some of the Hokie bucket list with your student. A lot of his free activities that you can do on campus and around the area with your student. So I appreciate that question. It may not be the answer that you want, but that's what's happening. I appreciate you pointing that out, Meredith. Here you'll see on your screen, we do want you to help us to improve these webinars. Although sadly, this will be the only one that I'm presenting, so it's not going to get any better. I tell you, it can only get better. So please use the feedback survey here. There's a QR code pictured there, and the website is bit.ly/VTFamWebSurvey. We would appreciate that. You can watch past webinars and recordings of this and future webinars at our YouTube channel, which is at Hokies on Track/videos. That includes the May 15th academic advising and course registration and the May 20th housing, LLPs, and dining. And please notice that some of the future webinars have some of that repeat information. We'll be doing academic advising and course registration again on June 5th. A little more about housing, move-in, and billing on June 24th. June 26th is a webinar for international families. Note the time, 8 a.m. And then July 8th, 6 p.m., residential well-being move-in weeks of welcome. And then July 17th, a webinar specifically for first generation families. Once again, your next steps are checking that NowWhat.vt.edu. We encourage you to do the optional family version of the orientation module at orientation.vt.edu. Make sure your student is checking their @vt.edu email daily for this important information that's coming out. And our contact information is there at the bottom of this screen too. Okay. I did see a question, Sam, and I think you answered it, but I think it was a question about families coming from out of state and spending time around move-in. And this might speak to what I said earlier, just informing families, because sometimes, you know, what we imagine it's going to be is not matching up with what's actually happening, but there is structured activity for your student on the day of move-in, following move-in. There's a little bit of time, but it's not a lot of time after their move-in before they have like required meetings and then social activities that are highly, highly encouraged in order then to get started, get them connected with the campus and with the community here at Virginia Tech. So once again, I'll just say, if you do want to spend time with your student, we do recommend that time be spent before move-in. There's a little bit of time afterward, but generally, we would love for you to allow your student to have that full move-in experience with the rest of their peers for those activities. Meredith or Sam, I know that's a little bit new. It tweaks and gets a little bit better every year. Is there anything else to say about that, about move-in day?
I will be completely honest. I was so focused on answering this question about documents that I missed your question to me, Barry.
Okay,
Can you
no
repeat
problem.
that real quick?
Well, just we were wondering what you typed for the folks about coming out of state, about move-in. You know, I had said maybe you shouldn't plan on after move-in.
Yeah, so your student, once they check in, come July, they're going to sign up for a move-in time slot, and then at that point they're going to know literally what time of day they're going to move in. When they are moving in, say they choose a 9 a.m. time slot, at that point they will have from 9 a.m. till I think it's 5 p.m. if I remember correctly, 5 or 5:30, to really just get settled and spend time with you. So it does day one, how much time you have available with your student will depend on that move-in time slot. A lot of people might be in state, and so they're leaving that morning. They get here in the afternoon or evening, get moved in, and then the student goes straight into activities that evening. If you are out of state and you definitely know that you want time with your student, I do know of people in the past who have come early. Your student cannot move in early, but if you are choosing to maybe get a hotel room in the area, you can hang out in the area, explore Blacksburg and the surrounding New River Valley a little bit, and then maybe the next day or 2 days, however long afterwards, up until your student's move-in date, then they'll move in. Once they move in, though, I mean, their day one evening and then their day two, pretty much all day and evening is booked. And so if you cannot come early and you have to move it, or you have to bring your student here during their day one, just be prepared for them to kind of be whisked away and join in with the crowd. If you were to stick around up through their day three, they're going to have a lot more time on their hands and available to you. Now, all of this being said, is there are special populations of students that their schedules are built out and do look a little bit different. The core is one of those. The core should be answering all of your questions in some town halls, town hall events. Their move-in experience looks wildly different than the regular new student. Additionally, one of those other populations is LLP, or Living Learning Program, Living Learning Community students. They will have orientations for their LLP, and some of that might happen on their day 3. So that means that if you have a regular traditional student who's not in an LLP, you might get some time with them on day 3 if you're sticking around. Otherwise, you might have to wait till day 4 or fall family weekend. Most people do kind of drop their student off and head out.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. There was a question about transportation for students who fly into the Roanoke Regional Airport and how they would then get from Roanoke Regional Airport to Virginia Tech. And I want to put that into the chat. I typed the answer. We have a great bus service that services the area. We have the Smartway bus, which is a very affordable bus that goes from the Roanoke area all the way to Blacksburg and then Virginia Tech campus several times daily. And then also the Blacksburg Transit in and around town is free, all around Blacksburg, Christiansburg, and our general area and serving campus. It does take researching the app, the website, the schedules on the website to make sure that it's working for you the way you want it to work. So I would say those are excellent resources. And now I am posting the answer into the chat. It took me that long.
I can kind of talk about, I'm going to combine 2 questions.
Yeah.
Are rooms assigned, or students get to choose a room in the dorm they have been accepted to? With that, students have not chosen their room selection just quite yet, and that is based off of the time they accepted and made their deposit. So the earlier that students have made their deposit, the earlier their time slot is to select their room. So it is once the earlier time slots get more choices and the later time slots get less choices. So you don't really get assigned, the students get to pick their room selection. And once again, that is based off of a time slot. I don't believe when they get the time slot. I know it's going to be coming up in June. Do either of you know the exact date?
I don't know yeah.
It's like mid-June, is when they will receive an email about their time slot. And then that leads me to, do most students already have a roommate when they sign up for housing, or is it very common to select a room and get a random roommate? I'm assuming most LLCs have wait lists now. Are there social events in each dorm so students can get to know each other? So that was a lot of questions to one, but I'll make sure to answer each one. It varies across if students already have a roommate or not. I've known both in my time at Virginia Tech, some people have done random and some people have come in with a roommate. I came in with a roommate. I do believe that room selection and roommate selection does end on June 1st with the housing contract. However, the LLC application ends on June 3rd. So if they still want to try to apply for an LLC, they still have time. I believe that is on Monday. So they have until June 3rd until the LLC applications are over. But June 1st is the end of the application, or the signing the housing and dining contracts, which is where students select their roommates. So if they have not already selected a roommate now, when it comes time for room selections, they only are responsible for finding a room with 1 bed rather than 2 beds if they have a roommate. And then for the social events, typically our residential well-being student leaders, which are also that's what we call it here at Virginia Tech. Most people know them as RAs, but we call them student leaders. It varies if they host events or not. When I was a freshman, we did host socials. What's another good thing is, as we mentioned before, weeks of welcome is a great way for students also to get to know each other. Typically what happens is the student leaders create a group me chat or whatever other platform they can have for all the students on the hall to have their contacts, and they'll post about like social gatherings and stuff like that. So it just varies on the student leader for the socials. But if the student leader doesn't host any, then we have the weeks of welcome events going on as well.
Yeah, and one new thing that we are doing this year, so last year, residential well-being student leaders helped us a little bit by sometimes bringing students over to events. We also have a new resource this year that we're working on a plan where our weeks of welcome leaders will be meeting students in general quad areas at certain times in the evening. So if your student for some reason does not get connected with their residential well-being student leader or other people in their halls, or they're just completely lost, they really just need to make their way to a quad area in the evening, and weeks of welcome leaders will be escorting them to events. One other piece of that last question that I wanted to answer that comes up quite a bit is, how do students really truly know who they're living with, and what does roommate selection look like? A lot of students at Virginia Tech do tend to find people online. So as Meredith mentioned, she came in with a roommate, and if your student does not already have a roommate in mind, what I have seen a lot of tech students do is they join social media pages or groups, and then they tend to chat in there and find people. If your student does not feel comfortable doing that, or just hasn't found a group yet, then they can do that within the StarRes portal, like Meredith was saying, but just wanted to add some details there. So as a student is looking for a room, they can either choose a room that's completely empty, they can claim one of those beds, and then other people can look at their profile and choose that second bed. Or your student can look for a room that already has one bed taken, and then that means that they get to really truly select their roommate, because they get to look at that person's profile to see if they think they might get along with them or not. So your student, all students will be filling out a profile within StarRes that talks about things like cleanliness, or what time do they wake up in the morning, or how do they feel about visitors, etc. That way they can kind of have an idea of who they're choosing.
Thanks for answering that. We are nearing the 1 hour time slot. Time flies when you're having fun and answering great questions. We'll stay on a little while longer and try to get some of these open questions. Then we do have a question about the bus system. The bus system sounds great. Are the students oriented on the bus and BT system during orientation and weeks of welcome? I know it's discussed, but it's not. We don't go and take 7,800 students on bus rides. So that is something that I would recommend that you talk to your student about. That's a great skill for them to learn on their own, to do it on their own. So many students do it. Almost every one of our commuter students ride the BT in every day, several trips in a day. The bus system is fantastic. The drivers are friendly and professional. Learn and use the Blacksburg Transit here at Virginia Tech. There was a question about football tickets and waiting for the student portal to be able to purchase, and whether there'll be block of tickets for family weekend. And I think we're trying to work with athletics to maybe get a block of tickets, but it doesn't make them any cheaper to purchase. And just knowing that hype is high for football this year, and I got a feeling that just about every home game is going to be sold out quickly. So if you're really into football, you might want to just go ahead and purchase it directly through the Hokiesports.com athletics ticket office, if you don't want to wait any longer, if you're worried about your seats or that kind of thing. And then maybe there was a couple that came in earlier on, and they're a little bit related. And I know, Sam, I know you're typing, and this is one that I will need your help on, but this idea of power of attorney needed for students over the age of 18 in the event of emergency, the documents, and then also like the age that if the student is 17, what can you say to that?
Yeah, so when in general, when it comes to access at Virginia Tech, this is something that Barry talked a little bit about earlier, but I would really encourage you all as family members or parents to go out and explore what FERPA access means and make sure your student understands this as well. In general, your student's information at Virginia Tech is protected by FERPA. So it's a federal law, and we do not share information about their housing or their grades or conduct, etc. That said, if you have FERPA access, then we can share that information. Your student does have to grant you FERPA access, and then you would have to provide a code. Now that is all for general information, such as, like I said, conduct and whatnot. When it comes to emergencies, things do look a little bit different. The university is able to reach out to a student's emergency contact when it comes to like a safety or well-being concern or physical emergency, whatever it might be. So we are allowed to reach out to those emergency contacts. So just make sure that your student has completed their profile, their Hokie spot information that has that info there. And yeah, we do not want students to ever be in a situation where they feel like they are literally suffering by themselves. We will reach out to emergency contacts when that is the case. If you are ever helping your student navigate an emergency or a crisis, the Dean of Students office is a really, really good, powerful resource. They are there to help students navigate crises, and they'll also be the ones to work with you should any emergency arise. About a power of attorney, I have heard of students and families completing that paperwork prior to coming to Virginia Tech just to be on the safe side. If that's something that you're interested in, go for it. It's not something that Virginia Tech posts a process for. However, once a student does come to Virginia Tech, we do have something called student legal resources available. And through the legal resources, which are free to your student, they can talk to lawyers on campus who are able to help them through things like power of attorney paperwork and whatnot.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep.
All right. We are past the hour mark. And Sam, you were typing an answer, but why don't we answer it live too? Your student is hoping her friend on the wait list will get accepted so they can room together. Do those on the wait list know before rooms are picked?
So I will be honest, I cannot say for sure whether they will know or not. The transfer accept deadline is coming up really soon on June 1st. After transfers accept, admissions will have a really good picture of what the incoming class will look like in terms of data, and then they're going to start moving through the wait list. And so I can't say how quickly that's going to happen or where that friend might be on the wait list. So I can't guarantee if that will happen or not by the time housing opens. However, my gut tells me that she will likely know or they will. I don't know if the genders were there. So I don't know. They might know by that point, but I can't say for sure. Your student's friend, if they have questions, they can reach out to admissions. And then as for your student, I would just tell them to hang tight and then be ready to select a different roommate or an open room if that's the case. They might get a little bit of time. I do know that admissions tries to process their waitlist people as quickly as possible, so I imagine it'll be done.
Thank you for answering that, Sam. Those are some tricky questions. We would love for you folks who are watching to give us some feedback. We still see there's 54 participants watching. Please give us feedback at the URL that I have put into the chat, even though it's not hot because it's a shortened URL, bit.ly/VTFam web survey. It will help us to make these better. We also welcome, now that we don't have any open questions in the Q&A as we wrap up, if you'd like to say a thank you or say a go Hokies, We could drop that into the Q&A before we sign off. Once again, have your student check their @vt.edu email daily for the important information. Families, check NowWhat.vt.edu and check that optional family version of the orientation.vt.edu. Thank you so much for watching, and let's see if you do it. Let's go. And then you type Hokies. That's a tradition we have at Virginia. Although I don't know, typing it kind of takes a little bit of the effect out. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And have a good night. We're going to stop the recording, and then we staff will stay on just to lick our wounds a little bit, I think.